Swift reaction from Jordan today in the wake of a new ISIS video. 2 Iraqis with ties to the terror group were executed at King Abdullah's request. It comes only one day after a new ISIS video surfaced, allegedly showing the brutal murder of a Jordanian pilot, Mohamed El Rashidy, who was burned alive. Horrific video to watch. How are the Jordanians reacting to the latest news? And what impact could this video have on the coalition's fight against ISIS and of course, in Jordan itself? Joining me now, Mohamed El Rashidy, the director of the Canadian Arab Federation. He is in Toronto. Michael Bell is the former Canadian ambassador to Jordan, knows the area very well. He's with me in studio. What do you, Michael, the reaction, not only to the this horrific video, but now in Jordan, Hashemite kingdom, King Abdullah then immediately executes these al-Qaeda prisoners. How does this fight against ISIS play out there?
Well, I think the vast majority of Jordanians are going to support this kind of thing. Certainly the tribes, which are the underpinning of the military and the security services, are going to support the king in this effort, particularly when one of their own went down. I think among Palestinians it's a bit less certain, and there were demonstrations outside the royal palace criticizing the monarchy. But I think on the whole, the regime is pretty masterful in creating an atmosphere of stability, of acquiescence, if nothing else, within the country. I don't anticipate any major problems for the king or his entourage in maintaining control and taking a still more assertive role with the Americans.
The language of torture, of propaganda, plays out and resonates in different ways here than in Jordan. Mohammed, what do we know about the pilot, Mohamed El Rashidy? Obviously, selecting him and why ISIS burns him alive, why is he who he is plays a role in terms of the impact here?
Yeah, that's an important point to explain why ISIS went this far and increased the shock value of the video. He belongs to a prominent family in Jordan. Jordan essentially is a state created with multiple tribes, and then you have a monarchy that governs them. And what ISIS is trying to do here is turn the tribes against the monarchy. It's a divide and conquer technique that ISIS has used effectively in Iraq and Syria and other places. So this type of humiliation and really insult to the tribes is supposed to show them how ineffective the monarchy is. But I will tell you, as Ambassador Bell has just mentioned, King Abdullah and Jordan are very apt at dealing with these types of situations and turning them to their advantage. So I just got reports that King Abdullah himself, who's a trained pilot, is going to participate in bombing runs against ISIS in an F-16 fighter jet, just like the El Rashidy was flying.
Yeah, we've just heard that the king himself may participate. On the same token, we've heard that the UAE, another partner, may suspend their bombing runs. Michael Bell, what do you make of the response, the immediate hanging of these 2 prisoners?
Well, I think there's a certain unease throughout much of the Arab world. In the UAE, the Emirates' decision to cease flying until they get some kind of guarantee that the Americans are going to be much more active in terms of search and rescue. I'm not sure that they're not already as active as they could be, but the UAE is taking this as a measure of protection vis-a-vis their own people and the mood in the area. I think Jordan is past that. In other words, to the extent there is opposition, I think this is going to be portrayed in Jordan as a loss of honor among the tribes. And I think ultimately, as Mohammed suggests, I think they're going to be able to strengthen their claims to legitimacy. King Hussein, King Abdullah's father, was very, very adept at taking risks like this. I think if the son does this, this is going to solidify the country behind him. There will always be dissenters.
Right. But
basically, I think the regime is secure.
You know, this has always been, Mohammed, and again, we got to go to that next level. This is all what's going on here, the Sunni versus Shia, but now there's other levels in Jordan, of course, as you talk about the Hashemite kingdom, and then there's different tribes. But what is ISIS's strategy in terms of of splitting apart the Arab world here, in some of who have joined the coalition, some who have not. Can you take us inside what they're trying to do here?
Yes, it's very disturbing. It's a very disturbing policy. As a basis, Evan, it's a policy of prestige in that ISIS had its rear end handed to it in Kobani. If you remember that city where the Kurds were fighting for life and trying to prevent ISIS from taking it over completely and holding a city right on the border between Syria and Turkey, which would be a very powerful symbol for ISIS to accomplish. So due to the airstrikes, essentially you have no buildings left standing in Kobani now. The Kurds have, with the help of the airstrikes, have overtaken the city. ISIS has been defeated. So how do you counter that defeat? Well, ISIS is very good at this. They turn around, they create this propaganda-type video with extra shock value on top of the horrible beheadings of the 2 Japanese journalists to then look like, hey, look at us. We're humiliating an entire nation. We're able to be a counter force. And nobody's talking about Kobani. I mean, the viewers, yourself, we're not talking about Kobani and the defeat that ISIS was dealt there. We're talking about this horrific video. So that's really what it's about, is ISIS remaining in the headlines, showing that it's still the place to go to if you want to counter the quote-unquote evil U.S. and its allies.
But, I mean, clearly they are still very effective in Syria. Whether or not they're still effective in Iraq remains a question, right? We're getting conflicting reports. How do you read how the West responds to this? I mean, you know, stonings, beheadings, we've seen that. Burning someone alive is even against Islamic faith. So they're sending a brutal signal with this new act of violence.
Yeah, very, very good points. Evan, everything ISIS is doing is against Islamic faith, particularly killing innocents. But what you have with ISIS that's really dangerous here is that ISIS, I know you're saying ISIS may be going away in Iraq or losing the battle. They're not. ISIS is not going away. Obviously, you have to defeat them in Syria, which nobody is willing to even try. And part of the problem is that you have Hafiz al-Assad, the Syrian leader, who obviously was sort of the counter to the rebels in this. He was seen as this horrific dictator who's carrying out these massacres. So you had ISIS as a counter to him, and now he's looking like, you know, a lot less bad. And you have Jordan, Turkey, other regional major players who were against Hafiz al-Assad, and they're now looking at the situation and saying, wait a second, how are we going to be fighting against ISIS when we don't support al-Assad? So you've got a very complicated situation. But I'm telling you, ISIS is very far from being defeated. ISIS is doing something. Yes.
Let's bring in Michael. Michael.
Yeah, I think ISIS is under pressure in Syria, more so than in Iraq. Part of the reason we're seeing this weakness in Syria is because of the air power and the enhanced ground power of various forces, Peshmerga, the Iraqi army, and what have you, are forcing ISIS to pull troops into Iraq to protect the gains there. I think that's very important to realize. The other thing I think that maybe we've missed so far is in terms of Jordan. Jordan is very dependent on external money coming in because it has no resources. The U.S. Congress looks like it's going to almost, well, add another 50%, almost double the amount of money that they're going to put into Jordan. So everybody's got an investment in the West, Canada, the United States, the Europeans, in that regime surviving. So how ISIS does or doesn't do, I think it's on the defensive right now. It's not going to alter the determination of the king to defend his honor and not to be shamed by people that I would say he personally and his family generally regard as trash, if I might say so.
All right, I got to leave it there, but as you say, the coalition will support Jordan, which is important in that alliance. The wild card still, the big wild card, Turkey. How do they react? We're going to keep talking about this. Mohamed El Rashidy, Michael Bell, great to have you both. And again, trying to get at the next level of this conflict because there's lots of messaging and different cross currents going on. I appreciate your perspective.